All right. Welcome everyone to GameCity Guest Lecture 5. My name is Janne Haapala and I work for Critical Force, and I will give you a lecture about version control for game development. And we will talk a little about choosing the right strategy for you. And before the lecture, I asked a bit about from the team leads about your teams and your plans. How much version control experience do you have? Um, and based on that, I made this presentation for you. We will go through about the importance of version control, and then we'll look a bit into common concepts across different uh, version control systems. And then we'll look about what could be your strategy for version control, because it kind of depends on the project and game engine. And then in the end, I'll give some general collaboration tips and try to pour all my knowledge that I've gathered in my career to you. Let's hope it goes well. So first, some short introduction. The name is Janne Haapala, as I said, avid gamer for my whole life. That led me to study game development in Kajaani. I graduated 2013 and joined Critical Force pretty quickly after that. I've been at Critical Force since then, closing in on 11 years in a couple months. Currently as lead programmer, and I have experienced at work working in multiple game projects, various teams of different sizes, working on both Unity and Unreal. And since this is a version control lecture, I added the experience I have about version control. So I've used, in a professional context, I've used Git, GitLab, Perforce, and Plastic SCM, which is now being branded into Unity version control. And as a programmer, I worked pretty much across the spectrum as a full stack, done gameplay programming, prototyping, backend services, databases, you name it, meta game systems, all stuff like that. But let's hop straight into version control. Why is version control so important? Let's think about game development a bit. Game development takes time. It takes a long time. It takes weeks, but more often it takes months, or actually it takes years. And sometimes it feels like it takes forever. And when it takes forever, or when it takes years, there's a lot of risk. And we cannot risk losing that work. So, would you like to save your progress? I bet you would. So, in short, in addition to everything else that version control is, it is a backup solution. So it prevents data loss and overriding, which in itself is important. But let's continue. Here we see a game. And there's quite a lot happening at once. Just like in game development, there might be many guys there doing a lot of things, just like in this screenshot. An artist might want to improve the explosion effect. A UI programmer might want to iterate on the enemy health bars. Programmer might be fixing a bug on the score feed. And a designer might want to adjust maybe the default touch control positions. And they need to be able to do this all at once, at the same time. So in short, developers need to be able to work on different things at the same time. And version control helps make that easy. Easy way to get new changes. Easy way meaning couple of button presses. Easy way to push in your changes. Easy way meaning couple of button presses, hopefully. Great. It makes collaboration easy. What else? When you develop games, soon enough, maybe you worked for a while, and it's been fine and dandy, but soon enough you will encounter bugs or crashes. And sometimes they are easy to fix. Sometimes they are obvious, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are elusive. Sometimes you just don't know what is happening. And version control keeps a history for you. Let's think of this example from a couple of years back. We were working on an Unreal mobile game. And for some reason during the development, maybe there was about a period of 3 weeks or something, maybe 3 weeks that we did not test the game on one of the target platforms. We would test the game on Android. We would test the game on editor. We would test the game on Windows. But for some reason, we didn't test it on iOS. And after 3 weeks, we tested it on iOS. And we got a native crash immediately when the game launches. And we got no debug information about it. We had no idea what's going on. I mean, it was something related to graphics, but that's it. If we had no version control, we would be pretty lost. We would have to maybe by elimination try to think what we added, what has changed in 3 weeks. And then by elimination try to find what causes it. But since we had version control, which tracks what was done and when, we could go back to any state, that made it so that we could actually find the exact small change instead of the whole 3 weeks of what caused the issue. And we could make builds out of those different times and see when it started to crash on iOS. So while it tracks and stores changes over time, it actually helps you in debugging in the worst possible cases. It lets you go back in time. Let's add that there too. Nice. There's another thing it lets you do, which helps in all of this. It lets you see exactly what changed. For example, a code in code changes. It would look something like this. But some version controls also offer image diffs. Maybe a bit more game oriented or game development catering version control systems. And this is from Perforce. by the way. And Perforce also shows or enables Unreal blueprint diffing inside Unreal. So, all right, easy to compare changes. Then I have a picture of the um, blueprint comparison. And I think this only works on Perforce. Not 100% sure. This is game development and everything changes so quickly. But I think at least a couple years back, it was only Perforce. It only worked with Perforce for some reason. All right. So if version control does all this, I think it's important even as a solo dev, even if you work alone. I'm sure you agree that you should use it, even if you don't collaborate, because it just helps you. All right. Now that we all agree it's great and important and we should use it, definitely. Let's look at some of the common concepts. These are common across many version control systems, but the main example here will be Git, because all of you were using it and have been using it. Let's start with repository. So a repository is a place where a collection of files and changes are stored. And it's almost used as a synonymous to project nowadays. I notice. Like GitLab, for example, it doesn't even show a button to create a new repository. It just says create a new project, and that creates the repository for you. And here we see also the screenshot. This is from GitHub's create new repository. It immediately links it or references that it contains your project files, which is a nice way to think about repositories. So if you're wondering what is a repository, think of it as the place where your project is. So it can be public with GitHub and GitLab and such cloud services. It's if your project is open source, makes sense. But most game projects, commercial projects, you want to be either private or internal if you're hosting your own GitLab, for example. So when you're creating or when you're beginning a new project, the first thing you probably should do is create a new repository. Simple enough. Then let's name drop something here. Let's name drop branch. Each repository has at least one branch. This is usually the main. And this is not necessarily true for Perforce because it's a bit different. But hang in there. Let's move into commits. What you see here is a screenshot of a Git GUI. And specifically, you see part of branch history. Each of these lines being commits. And commits are records, or commit records changes made to files in your repository, capturing the state of your project at the moment. And each commit represents a snapshot of the entire project at a specific point of time. And if you, I don't know if you see them because they are quite small, but there's these small yellow dots on the yellow line. And the yellow line is actually the branch. And there's another line there, orange line, which is another branch, but the commits are on the yellow one. And each commit has next to it a very helpful message. And after that, there's who made the commit, and then there's an unique identifier or hash, which just is created automatically. It ensures that everything can be refreshed accurately and tracked. Fair enough. Since most of you are using GitHub and many of you are using GitHub Desktop, I thought let's see what it actually looks like there and how can you see them there, because there's an unlimited amount of Git GUIs, some better and some worse. And in GitHub Desktop, it looks like this. You find it under the history, and you'll find all the commits there, and then you can click on them, and then you'll see the same thing. You see the hash and how big was the change, how many lines added, removed, what was changed, and you can specifically see what the exact changes are. And there's a lot you can do there, I'm sure. Let's go to branches. We already went through this thing that every repository starts with the default branch, which is typically called main or master. And you can think of branches as lines of development. I think that's an easy way to think about them. And you can create more of them. You can create them for features or bug fixes or experimentation or just for fun. And after you're done with your work on the branch, and if it turns out well, it's fun, maybe it's an experimentation and it's good, maybe it's a bug fix, maybe it's a feature, it's usually merged back to main. Not always, however, because sometimes if it's like a new experimentation or prototype feature or something and it just doesn't turn out well, it's not fun or something, we might abandon the branch. And in both cases, either they are merged or they're abandoned. Eventually, they might be deleted. And that's pretty normal flow. Now, a bit more about branches, because Git is very flexible tool and it supports various ways of working. You could work on a main branch, like I think some of you are. Um, that's the kind of image I got from the messages, that there's a little bit of experience. We have used a little bit of branching at school projects, which is fine. So yeah, this is one way to work. Uh, Another way would be to do the feature branches. And you could go crazy. You could use Git flow for release isolation management. Really, with Git, there's as many ways of working as there are people. Let's talk about the working on main. Let's compare the two simpler ones a bit. In my opinion, this is simple enough for a very small team. I don't know if one person is a team, but actually, like, I would prefer this maybe with one or two people. Three is on the limit, in my opinion. Uh, if the team gets any bigger, you have frequent conflicts, and it's easier to lose your work. Because when you work like this, you usually solve conflicts against your local commits, not commits that have already been pushed to the repository. So it's a bit risky. I've lost some work back in the days when working like this. But the good thing is that you probably won't be working on big features like this, because that's super risky. If you work on something that takes multiple days and you don't branch, how do you commit? How do you push it? Because if you push it, you expose the whole team to incomplete work. So either you take the risk or you expose your team to incomplete work and bugs and maybe whatever. If you work this way, mistakes quickly affect everyone on the team because everyone works on the same branch. It's also harder to roll back changes because while you might want to roll back something, there might be good commits in between. It's always possible because Git has so many tricks. Uh, so it's always possible. What I'm saying is it's harder. So what about the feature branches and merging then? If you work this way, each developer can work and save their work in isolation until their feature is complete. And incomplete work or buggy code can be committed and pushed to the server without it affecting anyone else but the developer working on the branch. So it's okay to push that code. And when you're done with your feature, when it's complete, then you can merge it. Then you can handle the conflicts. There's nothing preventing you from handling them earlier or in smaller parts also, but in general, it's not like when working on the main and anytime you push, you might have to solve a conflict. Also with this workflow, and if you're using Git, GitHub or GitLab or similar, it opens up a really great, one of the greatest features or the most important things in game development, which is pull requests, as they are called in GitHub, and merge requests, as they are called in GitLab. And we'll go into those a bit. So merging. Usually when we talk about merging, we are talking about combining changes from one branch or taking changes from one branch to another. Uh, so this can be done with the merge commit. Best done with a pull request or a merge request. So this is just a structured way to merge code changes into another branch. It allows for easy review, commenting, tests, uh, action triggers like build triggers and stuff like that, all from the GitHub or GitLab web pages. Also comes with other great stuff like easy automatic squashing before merge, which in turn helps keep the main branch commits clean. Um, and in one of the most important things also that it helps in preventing mistakes. And I had to make sure because I'm not very familiar with GitHub itself, as I've mainly used GitLab. I had to check if this is actually possible in GitHub, and of course it is. Um, so if someone, I think I dropped this term squashing and I didn't explain it, it is explained here. So I have a all right, we are back. Okay, very good. I thought something was wrong because I heard a beep from my headset. Uh, all right, let's get back to it. I'm not sure exactly where I was. I was explaining about the squash because I dropped the name squashing here or the term, and it means combining multiple commits into a single one, essentially. So that's how you keep. If you squash when you merge, you keep the main line very clean. All right. Uh, I hope this is not a huge digression, but I thought I'd add a slide here about rule sets and branch protection uh, because I feel like this is so important. And um, so usually you can protect branches from destructive operations like force pushing or deletions. Uh, and these are like a safeguard for those big mistakes. If you don't quite know, if you're using I don't know, if you're using a new Git GUI that's a bit crazy or something, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, it's possible to do something horrible for your Git repo. So that's why there's usually this kind of safeguards in place. Uh, in GitLab and GitHub, this is really easy to set up as there's rule sets for branches that you can do, and you can, with a couple button presses, block force pushes completely to main or even the development branch or whatever branch you want. And you can require pull requests before merging and stuff like this. But if you have your self-hosted or if you're self-hosting Git or uh, stuff like that, I don't think it's that easy to actually set up. And it's possible, of course. I mean, GitHub is doing it, GitLab is doing it. You can do it somehow with the server-side hooks. But I think there's probably not an easy solution still to that if you're self-hosting. So I really recommend using cloud services. Uh, anyway, consider protecting your main branch. Consider disallowing the force pushing and require commit submission through request. So you cannot even commit directly there. You can only open pull requests or merge requests. Unfortunately, as soon as I tried it today on GitHub, it said it's a paid feature for private repositories, not for public. I mean, if it was for public, I don't know if they'd had much business, but uh, it's paid for private repositories, unfortunately. So it started asking $4 per month or something like that. All right, conflicts. I wish I had time. It's already time. So much time has gone by. Wish I could go over more these important concepts, but conflict is a pretty common one, and I think everyone needs to handle this at one point. So conflicts happen when changes overlap somehow. It might be code lines, same code lines change, or binary assets change into commits. And then we don't know like which one, like how to combine those. And then we need to manually resolve them and fix it before we can merge. And luckily most Git GUIs offer visual tools and make the resolving easier, although sometimes they also confuse you more. One thing I've noticed many people are confused with after they solve all the conflicts, like, why isn't this over? I already did everything. You still have to add or stage the fixed files and commit the resolution to finalize the merge. And conflicts are nothing to be afraid of, and it's a natural part of development. And it doesn't mean you did anything wrong, and it doesn't mean that something is now broken, or, well, it could mean that you did something wrong or your team didn't communicate well, but it is a natural part of development, and it's bound to happen. It's supposed to happen. And there's a screenshot of one of these GitQuy visual uh, conflict solver tools, and they are usually look pretty much like that. So there's two windows on the top showing the changes in the two commits, and it shows what it has automatically handled already, but then it shows the line that it doesn't know what to do with automatically, and then you can select what to do with the merge conflict line and which one to choose, or to write something completely different there or whatever. All right. So will all this branching and Git work for you? Or what will work for you? Uh, I tried installing the new Unity DevOps version control, and the first thing it asks you to choose if you need all the features of source control, including branching and merging, or if you only need to edit and check in files. Well, I of course choose the first one, but I think branching might not be that important for all times, all team sizes, especially on Unreal Engine, for example. But what works for you depends on your team size, your project. There's two main strategies I would go for with a small team. One is branching and merging, and I would do this mainly for Unity projects. And for Unreal projects, I would consider file locking and less branching. You can still use branches, but you don't actually have to. And it scales pretty well up to at least 15 people in a team. And this obviously means that you need to use the Unreal Engine version control integration. But let's look at these strategies a bit again. All right, so we know developers can work independently and merge changes when ready. Nice. It keeps a clean main branch, but couple considerations. To avoid difficult conflicts, the team still has to communicate about changes to binary files or other difficult to merge files, Unity prefabs, scenes, etc. These are binary files, and I mean you can force them to be serialized, but they are still, you cannot confidently merge them or merge changes between them, because it's still, they're huge files and they're not always human readable. They have hashes, asset references, stuff like that. So you need to communicate. There's no way around that. So hopefully when you work with a team, you know what the others are doing. You know if you can work on this, or if this will cause conflicts if you go touch this now. And there's ways to mitigate this, but why I don't really think this is the best for Unreal is because this gets really tricky when there's a lot of binary files that constantly change. I mean, we always have binary files. We have files that we cannot merge. I mean, this is game development. We have textures, we have audio and everything, but those so rarely change. Not often many people are changing those at the same time. But with Unreal, it's a bit different because there's blueprints and there's animation blueprints and there's meta sound files and graphs and so much binary. So maybe just using main branch with the locking would be actually better. So it's simple. Everyone works in a single branch. Very simple for new developers to grasp. File locking prevents multiple people from modifying the same asset. And the file locking works pretty automatically if you have the integration in the engine. So file locking is only enabled for binary files, so code can still be merged, branched freely, edited by multiple people, no problem. But considerations again. It's still just one main branch. And bugs that are pushed into the main can inconvenience others. And file locking in most tools doesn't work across branches. So if you use file locking or if you rely on file locking, it might make you not branch because then branch doesn't take into account those file locks. And then when you try to merge the branch, you cannot merge anything because you have been changing the binary files in both branches. Luckily, a new thing, at least in plastic SCM, Unity version control, that it now has smart locks, I think since 2023, which support multiple destination branches and prevents merge conflicts across branches. I mean, of course, you could always handle this without smart locks too, but it just would be inconvenient. And they really sell this feature now, and they say it's amazing. But I haven't tested it. My plastic teams have been so small that we haven't needed branching. Small comparison, still in a table format. Branching and merging versus less branching and file locking. Personally, uh, I can see this commonly used with Git, maybe plastic SCM sometimes. And for the less branching and file locking, Perforce and Plastic, which both support file locking out of the box. Git doesn't, but it's still possible to do with Git. Branching and merging, definitely easy for code-heavy projects. Git branching is super cheap, super lightweight, easy in every way. Except when you have the binary files, um, then it kind of stops working. Branching kind of stops working. Collaboration. Developers can branch, merge changes later. Developers work on same branch and exclusively lock files to prevent conflicts. Yes. Yeah, there's need to coordinate work on hard to merge assets on this strategy. And you need to set up the file locking for hard to merge asset types on this strategy. So what do developers use? What do the pros actually use? According to Diverse uh, version control survey, 82% use Git, 28% use Perforce. So it's still the AAA industry standard as it's been for a long time. Why these percentages go over 100 when totaled is because many developers use multiple. It's I'm kind of surprised that there's about 20% of developers that don't use Git at all. But well, we'll take it. Then there's SVN still surviving. Um, has file locking. I've used it, but I don't remember much about it. Um, that's my image of it. That it's a bit lacking in features, or it feels old to me. I don't know if that's true. Uh, and Plastic SCM, it's as old as Git, pretty much, almost as old as Git, but I only heard about it a few years ago, and now Unity bought it a couple years back, and they are really rebranding it to Unity version control, and they bundle it up with the DevOps cloud now. Let's summarize these main tools a bit, and let's look at something. Um, if there's something else and something new, possibly. So Git, okay, it's free. Yes, it's most common. Nice. Lots of free affordable cloud options. No wonder it's the most common. Feels complicated initially. According to surveys, new starting game developers say this is difficult. This is not easy. I guess they are used to more easier tools. It has cheap branching, but it doesn't handle binary files well. But you can use Git LFS, which helps. But it doesn't have file locking by default. But you can use Git LFS file locking. And I think it's supported in GitHub. I don't know. Maybe someone knows. I heard something like that. Uh, and also, I don't know if it's free if you use LFS anymore. I mean, GitHub. Maybe it is. Lots of graphical interfaces to choose from, like probably hundreds. Some free, lots of paid. I think the paid ones have turned out to be the best, in my opinion. I really like Git Fork, but there's other favorites that people have. Okay, let's move fast. A couple more slides here. Plastic SEM, now called Unity Version Control, free up to 3 seats, purchased and developed by Unity now. Good Unreal Engine integration, used a lot actually by Unreal Engine devs. Maybe, I don't know if it throws off people now that it's bought by Unity. Maybe people are more careful if they should learn that or not. Because who knows how well it will work with Unreal after that. But so far it's only gotten better in my opinion. It's easy to use, handles big files well, but it's getting more expensive. I don't know if it's true, but I saw the pricing that it's $60 per seat after the 3 seats per month. That's almost as expensive as Perforce. But it has the new smart locks, which is apparently super great. Then there's the Perforce, which is the industry standard for a long time for the big AAA games. Best Unreal integration, apparently. Maybe a bit hard to grasp. I know it is hard to grasp. If you have Git background, it is gonna be hard to grasp. It works so differently. Um, Also different terminology. Uh, Everything is a bit different, but just a tiny bit similar enough to confuse you and throw you like on your ass. But it also handles big files really well. There's very few cloud hosted options. Very few. More now than there was only a couple years back, but it's still expensive. I think it's the most expensive by far. That's my understanding, and from history, I would be confident to say that. There's a newcomer. This popped out uh, just within a year or something. And I've yet to test this, but I will because it's advertised in by game developer channels a lot now. It's called Diversion. It's new, free up to 5 users, educational up to 10. They market it as the best new version control for Unreal. 100 gigabytes free storage, and was it like not pretty cheap to increase that? And it has the Unreal integration. So I'll test this whenever I have time. Some final notes to help you really succeed with your team, with your games. Experiment with the workflows. Just bravely try it out. Even if people might be hesitant to branch, you're a bit scared sometimes about what will happen if I do this? Will I break everything? It doesn't matter because you will learn from your mistakes. And when you make a mistake, just think about it. Why did it happen? What happened? Try to understand what happened. Then keep experimenting. Even if the others don't use branching, you can try it. Write meaningful short commit messages. Even if it's Friday, try to write what and why instead of I fixed stuff or just leaving it empty or us dash or something like that. Commit and push often. Uh, it's easier to keep track on what was done. Try not to multitask. Try to focus on one thing at a time. It makes your commit creation easier. Figure out a branch naming strategy with your team because it will help later, especially when you see the merge commits, like what was merged. You easily see if feature branches are named with the feature prefix, if bug fixes are named with bug fix prefix, or minor uh, minor changes are like prefixed with misc or something. Merge regularly and test before merging. Obviously, be smart about this. If your change is really small, maybe you don't need to test. Maybe if it changes some values, you don't need to test. But the bigger, the riskier the merge is, test more. Use git ignore files. Git ignore files and ignore configs and whatever the version control has smartly. So keep the junk out of the repository. Logs, temp folders, cache, build artifacts, whatever is there. And there's templates for these. I see GitHub even offers you it when you create the repo, which is super nice. Not something I I had when I started. Uh, if you're not unsure what it should be there, find out about it. If you're still unsure, come to me and ask. Use managed services, don't host your own. You're a small team. You need all the time you can get for game development. You don't want to handle security or uptimes or be maintaining your servers or whatever. And communicate. Version control is a team tool. So if you have a big merge coming up, talk about it. Or even better, use the pull requests. Link them to your team. Review, test, comment. Nice. Something for the artists. Version control your art assets. Art source assets, I mean. So not the game ready ones. Game ready ones go to the game repo. But the art source assets, which can be huge, like 10 times the size and stuff like that. So your sculpts and high-res textures, whatever you have. But preferably, don't put them in the game project repo. Because not everyone wants to be downloading them, spending time downloading the gigabyte files that are not actually needed. Consider other solutions than Git for art source. Google Drive is a good option. Plastic Perforce SVN works. Just make a new repo. If you're using those for the game, you might as well use it for the art. But I would not put those in Git. I use Google Drive, Dropbox, whatever. Those work. For the Unity teams, communicate work on hard to merge assets like prefabs and scenes. Avoid huge prefabs. Use nested prefabs will help you with conflicts. You'll get less and they will be easier. And if you really must lose some work, at least it's easier to maybe redo because the prefab is smaller. Try out branching and merging. I hope every team does. And for the Unreal team, I heard there's only one. If you plan to make big maps or have multiple people contributing on maps, use one file per actor. It actually just works after that. But if you don't use that, any small change into any map locks it from everyone else. But if you use one file per actor, it won't lock it, and you can all edit the maps. Definitely connect the in-engine version control. Try to set up the file locking, and this is where you find the revision control in engine. If you didn't see it, you just need to click and connect, and that's how it works. We did it. Questions. We can take voice questions if you request, and I can read from the chat. So there's already something in the chat. LFS is still free. Yes, LFS is free, but is it free on GitHub? Maybe it is. And yes, Git Bash fans. Yes, very nice. That's where you go when the GUI fails you. It's nice that some GUIs actually have the terminal button that just opens Git Bash for you. Related to the branching and if it makes sense, version control wise, even in Perforce in my past company, we had our source asset distributed based on if they were environment or character assets or 2D assets. Because the workflow for them would be different from the tech art perspective. This helped us a lot in terms of delivering assets into the engine and Boolean or automated pipeline. All right. That sounds great. I should have asked more about our artists, like how did we manage all that and what did they do? But that's great. Do we have questions? My headset died, but now we're back. Okay. Thanks. If you compare Perforce and Git, which one would you recommend? Well, I recommend okay, for Unreal, right? Because otherwise it would be just Git, of course. But for Unreal, if you're an indie team without a budget, I think you have to go with Git. I mean, I don't know. I saw at one point I saw like Perforce Cloud or something for a few users, but I would use that if you could get it for free. But and I might lie if I say that it costs hundreds per year, like hundreds and hundreds per year per user, and you then even had to self-host it when we did it. So that's not an option. It's not an option to many people. So for Unity, use Git. For Unreal, use Perforce if you can afford it. Use Git if you cannot. But look at the other options. Look at Plastic. Up free at least for 3 people. Um, and those prices change all the time. So like look out like what kind of offers they have. And since there's competition now, like there's Diversion, which comes out with huge uh, free options and says they are the best for Unreal, I'm gonna at least test that, even though Unity version control currently is not costing me much. Yeah, the Perforce pricing, I think there's a question, or it's not a question, but I might have the exact price somewhere for Perforce. Uh, but I think you also have to kind of like, you have to contact them. You have to ask them about the price. They don't list the price. So I don't know if it's even the same for everyone. And in my experience, it was, I don't want to bash, I don't want to bash Perforce, but uh, it took its time to get a new seat and like communicate with them. You can just go and buy it and put your bank card and pay. But yeah, is everyone? Did this talk help? Was this too newbie talk, or did this go over your head? 'Cause I got the idea that most of you are beginners. That's what was told to me. Well, I hope it helped. There's people writing. Let's see if there's comments or questions. And after that, I think 1 hour is also almost up. So let me open the slide for the tips once more here for you. Yep. Good to know about alternative tools. Yeah. And one thing I think I didn't mention it, you can always change version control. If you want to try something, or well, you can just try something during the weekend. But if you actually want to change to something and organize it with the team, just do it so that you communicate to the team that everyone pushes everything in on Friday, by Friday, or like on Friday, by the end of Friday. And then a programmer does the repository change or changes everything to the new system, and on Monday everyone takes it over. We've done that from Plastic to Perforce, and that's how it works best. And in the best case, and in most version control systems, you even get the history if you do a few tricks. All right. All right. If there's no more questions, thank you everyone, and book your one-on-ones if you haven't. Most of you have. And see you guys. Thank you.